The Texas heat pressed down on our backyard like a heavy blanket, making the plastic tablecloth stick to everything it touched. Through the kitchen window, I could hear Mom's voice mixing with Aunt Susan's laughter as they arranged platters inside. I finished tying my sneakers, already knowing what I'd find when I stepped outside. Another celebration that somehow forgot I existed. The party was in full swing without me. Again, Emma stood at the center of our patio in her carefully chosen lavender dress, the one with the pearl buttons that Mom had spent an hour ironing. Her black hair was styled in perfect waves, creating that effortless look that only our mother could achieve after 45 minutes with a curling iron. But it was the cake that made my stomach clench. Three gorgeous tiers sat in the middle of the picnic table, decorated with purple and white roses made of frosting. Elegant script spelled out, "Happy 13th birthday, Emma," in silver letters. Just Emma. Not "Happy birthday, twins," or "Emma and Maya." Just her name, as if I hadn't been born on this exact same day 13 years ago. I lingered at the sliding door, gripping the handle, waiting for someone to notice the mistake. Maybe Dad would emerge from the garage with a matching cake. Maybe Mom would gasp and quickly pipe my name in leftover frosting. But no one looked my way. The entire backyard buzzed with relatives and neighbors, all focused on Emma as she posed for photos with her elaborate cake. "Maya, sweetheart, come get some cake," Aunt Susan called out, waving a plastic knife. She cut a corner piece, not from the beautiful three-tier masterpiece, but from a plain rectangular cake that sat on a folding table near the fence. The store-bought frosting was already melting in the heat, and there were no decorations except for a few sad-looking plastic roses someone had stuck on top. "Here you go, honey," she said, pressing the paper plate into my hands. "It's chocolate, your favorite, right?" I wanted to ask why my name wasn't on the real cake. I wanted to know why I got the afterthought dessert while Emma prepared to blow out 13 perfect candles. Instead, I managed a weak "thank you" and found an empty spot on the porch swing. Emma was already opening presents, each one carefully positioned for maximum photo opportunity. A new digital camera from Uncle Mike, art supplies from the Pattersons next door, a jewelry box that played Für Elise from Grandma Chen. "Say hi to my birthday video," Emma giggled, pointing her new camera at the growing pile of gifts. "I'm officially a teenager now." I took a bite of my cake, but the frosting was too sweet, coating my tongue with artificial vanilla. We were both 13 as of this morning, but apparently only one of us was supposed to celebrate aging. When Dad walked by with his beer, I stood up carefully. "Dad, how come my name isn't on the cake?" He barely slowed down, not even making eye contact. "Don't start, Maya. It's just cake. Don't make this about you." That phrase again. Every time something wasn't equal. Every time I was overlooked. I was the one making it uncomfortable. I swallowed the hurt and sat back down, watching my twin sister command the attention of every adult in our backyard. Later, Mom found me picking at the paper plate's edge. "Why are you over here by yourself, sweetheart?" "I'm not by myself," I said quietly, though we both knew I was. She brushed a strand of my hair behind my ear with a gentle smile. "You know you're not really the party type anyway, are you? You're more of a tomboy, sports and getting dirty and all that." She laughed like this was endearing. "We love you both equally. You know that." Then she walked away to adjust Emma's crown. Yes, she was wearing an actual tiara, leaving me alone with my half-eaten corner of store-bought cake. The only person who seemed to notice my absence from the festivities was Grandma Grace. She sat in her usual spot by the sunroom window, observing the chaos with quiet, knowing eyes. When I passed by her chair on my way inside, she discreetly slipped a crumpled $5 bill into my palm. Get yourself something special, baby, she whispered in Mandarin, her voice barely audible above the party noise. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like everything. Someone had seen me. Someone remembered that birthdays were supposed to be shared between twins. That night, as Emma showed off her gifts to our parents for the third time, I lay in our shared bedroom staring at Grandma Grace's $5. The money wasn't what mattered. It was the recognition, the acknowledgement that I existed, that I deserved to be celebrated too. I folded the bill carefully and tucked it inside my favorite book, already knowing I'd never spend it. Some gifts were too precious to use. Growing up as Emma Chen's twin meant living in a perpetual shadow that somehow never provided any shade. While she collected awards and accolades like baseball cards, I collected the leftover attention, the hurried good job when no one was really listening, the distracted pat on the head when they were already focused on Emma's next achievement. The pattern had been there all along, but I didn't recognize it until middle school, when the newspaper ran a small feature about our soccer team's championship win. There I was, front and center in the photo, mid-kick as I scored the winning goal. Local eighth grader shows promise, the headline read. I carefully cut out the article and taped it to our bedroom wall, right next to my collection of participation ribbons. For exactly 48 hours, I felt special. Did you see this? I overheard Mom saying to Mrs. Patterson at the mailbox. She was holding the newspaper, but her voice carried that careful tone she used when she wasn't sure how she felt about something. Our Maya made the sports page. How wonderful, Mrs. Patterson exclaimed. You must be so proud. We are, Mom replied, and I could hear the but coming before she said it. Though I do worry about her getting too focused on athletics. Emma's more well-rounded. You know, honor roll, piano lessons, drama club, debate team. I stopped listening and went back inside, the warmth from the newspaper clipping already fading. That evening at dinner, Emma was unusually quiet. She pushed her lo mein around her plate, stealing glances at me when she thought no one was looking. When Dad mentioned the article, praising my hustle and determination, Emma's chopsticks paused mid-air. I made honor roll again, she announced suddenly, interrupting Dad mid-sentence about my natural athletic ability. Of course you did, sweetheart, Mom beamed. You're so consistent, such a good student. The conversation immediately shifted to Emma's academic achievements, her upcoming piano recital, her leading role in the school play. My moment in the spotlight flickered out like a birthday candle in the wind. Over the following weeks, small things started going wrong. My soccer cleats disappeared the morning of an important game. We found them later in the garage, though I was certain I'd left them by the back door. My completed homework vanished from my backpack, forcing me to stay after school to redo assignments. My lucky pen, the purple gel one I used for all my tests, went missing from my desk. You're getting so scattered lately, Mom observed when I couldn't find my math textbook for the third time that month. Maybe you need to work on your organizational skills. Look at how neat Emma keeps her things. But I knew I wasn't scattered. I'd been the organized twin since elementary school, the one who reminded Emma about permission slips and project due dates. Something was happening to my belongings, but I couldn't prove it. Emma, meanwhile, seemed to float through life effortlessly. Teachers loved her thoughtful questions and perfect penmanship. Parents' friends always commented on her poise and maturity. She had a natural talent for being exactly what adults wanted to see: polite, studious, well-behaved. I was the one who spoke too loudly, who got grass stains on my school uniforms, who forgot to smile at the right moments. Emma was the daughter they could brag about at dinner parties. I was the one they had to make excuses for. Maya's going through a phase, I heard Dad tell Uncle Mike during a barbecue. You know how it is with twins? One's always more challenging than the other. The word challenging stuck in my mind like a splinter. Was that what I was? A challenge to be endured rather than a daughter to be celebrated. Emma must have sensed my growing awareness of our different treatment, because that's when the accidents started. The first incident happened on a Tuesday after soccer practice. I came home muddy and exhausted, my cleats leaving tracks across the kitchen tile, despite my efforts to step carefully. Emma was sitting at the counter doing homework, a small bandage wrapped around her wrist. "What happened to your arm?" I asked, dropping my gear by the washing machine. She looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "Oh, you bumped into me this morning when you were rushing to get ready for school. I scraped it on the door frame." I frowned, trying to remember the morning routine. "I don't remember bumping into you." "Well, you did," she said with a little shrug, returning to her algebra. "You were in such a hurry." "It's fine. These things happen when people aren't paying attention to their surroundings." Mom appeared from the pantry with grocery bags. "What's this about?" "Maya accidentally hurt Emma this morning," she explained, showing Mom the bandage. "She was rushing around and not being careful." Mom set down the groceries and examined Emma's wrist with concern. "Maya, you need to be more aware of your sister. She's smaller than you." "But I didn't. Just be more careful, okay?" Mom's tone carried a note of impatience that suggested this conversation was already over. That night, I lay in our shared bedroom listening to Emma's steady breathing and replaying the morning in my mind. I remembered being careful about not waking her when my alarm went off. I remembered checking the bathroom before going in, making sure I wasn't interrupting anyone. But doubt crept in anyway. Maybe I had been rushing. Maybe I hadn't been paying attention. Maybe this was my fault after all. On. The second incident occurred 3 weeks later. Emma came to breakfast with a small bruise on her shoulder, claiming I'd bumped into her while getting books from our shared bookshelf. The third was a scratch on her arm that she said came from me grabbing her during an argument I couldn't remember having. Each incident was minor, easily explained, completely plausible. And each time, our parents' concern for Emma grew a little stronger, while their patience with me grew a little thinner. "You've been different lately," Dad said during one of our increasingly rare one-on-one conversations. "More aggressive. Your mother's worried about your behavior." Aggressive. The word felt foreign in my mouth. "I'm not aggressive, Dad. I'm just trying to keep up." He studied my face for a long moment. "Maybe that's the problem. You don't need to compete with Emma. You just need to focus on being the best version of yourself." But I didn't know who that was anymore. Every version of myself seemed to be wrong somehow. Too loud, too quiet, too focused, too scattered, too much, not enough. The accidents continued with increasing frequency. Emma developed a remarkable talent for appearing injured just when I was starting to feel good about something. After a particularly good game, when I brought home a good test score, whenever I managed to capture Mom and Dad's attention for more than a few minutes. "Maya's been so clumsy lately," I heard Mom tell Aunt Susan over the phone. "I'm starting to worry that there's something wrong, the way she treats Emma sometimes." I stood frozen in the hallway, realizing that a narrative was being constructed around me, and I had no idea how to defend against something I didn't even understand was happening. Emma, meanwhile, began documenting everything. She started carrying a small notebook, jotting down dates and descriptions of our incidents. She showed it to Mom one evening after dinner, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine fear. "I've been keeping track," she said softly, "in case it gets worse." Mom flipped through the pages, her expression growing more concerned with each entry. "Maya bumped into me in the hallway. Maya grabbed my arm during homework time. Maya pushed past me at breakfast." None of it was true, but all of it sounded plausible. Emma had created a careful record of my supposed aggression, and I didn't even know the evidence was being collected until it was too late to defend myself. That night, as I brushed my teeth, Emma appeared beside me at the bathroom sink. "You need to be more careful," she said quietly, not looking at me in the mirror. "Careful about what?" She turned to face me directly, and for just a moment, I saw something in her eyes that made my stomach drop. Not fear or hurt, but something colder, more calculating. "About how you treat people," she said. "Actions have consequences. Maya, sometimes people get tired of being hurt." She squeezed past me in the doorway, and I found myself automatically stepping back, even though she barely touched me. But even that small contact felt dangerous now, loaded with the potential for misinterpretation. I was learning to be afraid of my own sister, and I didn't even understand why. By the time spring arrived, I had thrown myself into every activity I could manage: soccer, track, volunteer work at the animal shelter, tutoring younger kids, and math. If being well-rounded was what made you worthy of attention in our house, then I was determined to be the most well-rounded person in all of Austin. The strategy backfired spectacularly. "You're never home anymore," Mom complained when I asked permission to join the debate team. "Family time is important. Maya, Emma has piano lessons 3 times a week," I pointed out, "and drama rehearsals every Thursday." "That's different. Those are enriching activities that build character. You're just busy for the sake of being busy." The distinction stung, but I accepted it. Emma was enriched. I was just busy. Emma was focused. I was scattered. Emma was developing her talents. I was running away from my problems. The narrative was already written. I was just living it out. Meanwhile, the accidents evolved. Emma started appearing with more significant injuries: a sprained wrist from when I allegedly pushed her down the stairs I'd been at soccer practice, a cut lip from when I supposedly threw a book at her I'd been in the library with witnesses. Each incident was carefully timed and documented, building towards something I couldn't see coming. "We're concerned about your anger," the school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, said during a meeting I didn't know had been requested. "Your teachers have noticed some changes in your behavior: increased irritability, difficulty with authority figures." I sat in her small office, genuinely confused. "I don't understand. What changes?" She consulted a file on her desk. "Your English teacher noted that you've become more argumentative during class discussions. Your PE coach mentioned some incidents of unsportsmanlike conduct, and there have been reports about conflicts with your sister." Each accusation felt like a weight being added to my chest. I could see Emma's careful documentation being transformed into an official record of my deteriorating behavior. The notebook she'd shown Mom was becoming evidence in a case I didn't know was being built against me. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said carefully. "I haven't been argumentative or unsportsmanlike, and I've never hurt Emma." Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward with that practiced expression of concern that school counselors perfected. "Sometimes when we're struggling with our own emotions, we don't realize how our behavior affects others. Your parents are worried about you, Maya. They love you and want to help." But I could see from her face that she'd already made up her mind about who I was supposed to be. The evidence was there in Emma's notebook, in teachers' observations about my declining attitude, in my parents' carefully expressed concerns about my aggression. The lock appeared on our bedroom door on a Thursday in May. I came home from track practice to find it gleaming on the outside of the door we'd shared for 13 years. A small white label was stuck below the handle, for Emma's safety and peace of mind. I stood in the hallway for a full 5 minutes, staring at that lock, before Mom walked by with a laundry basket. "It's temporary," she said without stopping, "just until we can figure out what's going on with you." "What's going on with me?" I called after her, but she was already downstairs. That night, I knocked on the bathroom door where Emma was brushing her teeth. She looked at me through the mirror, her expression carefully neutral. "You told them I was dangerous," I said quietly. She continued brushing, taking her time with each tooth. When she finally spat into the sink, she turned to face me with that same calculating look I'd seen before. "I told them the truth," she said. "You have been hurting me. Maybe not on purpose, but you're angry all the time. You make me nervous. I've never touched you, Emma, not once." She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "Are you sure about that? You've been so jealous lately, so resentful. Sometimes I wonder if you even realize what you're doing." The certainty in her voice made me doubt myself all over again. Was I angry? Was I resentful? Had I been rougher than I realized, more careless with my words and actions? "I would never hurt you," I whispered. "I know you don't want to," she said softly. "But wanting and doing are different things, aren't they? Actions speak louder than intentions." She squeezed past me in the doorway, and I found myself stepping back automatically. Even that small contact felt loaded with danger now, pregnant with the possibility of misinterpretation. I was learning to be afraid of my own movements, my own presence in shared spaces. Emma had turned my existence into evidence against me, and I didn't know how to defend against accusations I couldn't even see being formed. The morning I was expelled, I woke up with a strange sense of dread that settled in my stomach like cold stones. It was a Tuesday in early May, and I had a geometry test I'd studied hard for. Emma was already gone. She had early morning choir practice, and the house felt unusually quiet. I was eating breakfast when Dad's phone rang. Principal Martinez's voice was loud enough that I could hear it from across the kitchen, even though I couldn't make out the words. Dad's face grew increasingly serious as the conversation progressed. "We'll be right there," he said finally. Hanging up. "What's wrong?" I asked, but Dad was already grabbing his keys. "Get your backpack. We're going to school." The drive was silent except for the radio playing softly in the background. When we pulled into the school parking lot, I saw Mom's Honda already there, and my stomach clenched with anxiety. Principal Martinez's office smelled like coffee and industrial carpet. Emma was sitting in one of the chairs across from his desk, a tissue clutched in her hand. Her left eye was swollen and discolored, a fresh bruise that looked painful and deliberate. I stopped in the doorway, genuinely shocked. "Emma, what happened to you?" She looked up at me with that bruised eye, and I saw something flicker across her face. Satisfaction, relief, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Sit down, Maya," Principal Martinez said, gesturing to the empty chair beside Emma. My parents flanked us like guards. Mom immediately went to Emma, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Dad stood behind my chair with his arms crossed, creating a barrier between me and any possible escape. "We have a serious situation here," Principal Martinez began. "Emma came to school this morning with significant facial injuries. She says you hit her during an argument last night." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I didn't touch her. I wasn't even home last night. I was at Jessica's house working on our history project. Her mom can verify that." "You came home around 10:30, Emma said quietly, her voice shaky and small. "I heard you in the hallway. When I asked where you'd been so late, you got angry and—" She touched her bruised eye gently. "That's not what happened." My voice was getting louder, more desperate. "I came home, said goodnight to Mom and Dad, and went straight to bed. I barely saw Emma." Principal Martinez consulted a thick file on his desk. We've had several reports over the past months about escalating tensions between you girls. Teachers have noticed significant changes in your behavior. Maya, increased aggression, conflicts with authority figures, declining academic performance. Declining academic performance. I stood up abruptly. I have a 3.8 GPA. I've never been in trouble before in my life. Sit down, Dad said sharply, and the coldness in his voice made me sink back into the chair. Principal Martinez leaned forward, his expression sympathetic but firm. Maya, I know this is difficult, but we have to take these allegations seriously. Combined with the documented pattern of behavior we've observed, and given the severity of Emma's injuries, we have no choice but to suspend you for the remainder of the semester. The room started spinning. Documented pattern. What documented pattern? The incidents in the hallways, he said, reading from the file. The verbal altercations that required teacher intervention. The episode where you allegedly threw supplies at Emma during art class. Your sister has been keeping careful records. Each accusation felt like another weight being added to my chest, making it harder to breathe. None of that happened. None of it. But I could see from their faces that they'd already made up their minds. The evidence was there in Emma's careful documentation, in her bruised face, in my own reputation as the difficult twin who was always causing problems. This is effective immediately. Principal Martinez continued, You'll complete your coursework remotely for the rest of the year. This disciplinary action will be noted on your permanent record. I looked at my parents, searching for any sign of doubt, any flicker of the unconditional love I'd always assumed was there. Mom was focused entirely on Emma, stroking her hair and whispering reassurances. Dad stared at the wall above my head, his jaw set in a hard line. You don't believe me, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Nobody answered. In that silence, I understood that the trial was over, and I had been found guilty without ever knowing I was being accused. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. When we pulled into our driveway, Dad sat gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Pack a bag, he said finally. What? Pack your things? You're going to stay with your grandmother for a while. For how long? He turned to look at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment. Something colder, final. Until you can figure out how to be part of this family without hurting people. As I climbed the stairs to pack, I could hear Emma crying softly in the kitchen, Mom comforting her with gentle words and promises that everything would be okay now. The sound followed me down the hallway like an echo of everything I was losing. I packed quickly, randomly, throwing clothes and books into a duffel bag without really thinking about what I'd need. On my desk, I found the newspaper clipping about my soccer goal, still taped to the wall. I took it down carefully and slipped it between the pages of my journal. At least someone, somewhere, had thought I was worth celebrating, even if it was only for one day. Grandma Grace's duplex sat on a quiet street in East Austin, where the houses were small but the yards were generous, and nobody bothered with perfect lawns. She met me at the door that first evening with a glass of sweet tea and no questions asked. Your room's upstairs, she said simply in her mix of English and Mandarin. Dinner's at 6. For the first week, I barely left that room except to eat and use the bathroom. I called my parents twice, but both times Mom said they needed space to heal as a family and that maybe I should use this time to reflect on my actions and make better choices. By the third week, I stopped calling. Grandma never pushed me to talk about what had happened, but she had her ways of showing she cared. She'd leave little notes in my lunch bag when I finally started attending Reagan High School. She'd pack extra dumplings in my thermos, She'd sit with me at the kitchen table while I did homework, not helping, but just being present. You know, she said one evening as I struggled with calculus, your grandfather used to say that truth is like a seed. Sometimes it takes a long time to grow, but it always finds a way to break through the soil eventually. I looked up from my textbook. What if no one wants to see it when it grows? She smiled and patted my hand with fingers that smelled like ginger and jasmine. Then you tend it anyway, baby, for yourself, if for no one else. High school at Reagan was different from the private academy where Emma and I had been students. Here, nobody knew me as the troubled twin or the girl who'd been expelled for violence. I was just Maya Chen, the quiet transfer student who kept to herself and worked harder than everyone else. I made the JV soccer team despite joining late in the season. My grades were perfect, a desperate attempt to prove I wasn't the academic failure my old school records suggested. I started tutoring other students in math and science, partly for the community service hours, but mostly because helping others made me feel useful again. Grandma came to every soccer game, cheering louder than any parent in the stands. When I scored the winning goal in our regional playoffs, she took a picture with her old film camera and had it developed immediately. That photo went up on her refrigerator, right next to a picture of my grandfather in his army uniform. Two fighters in the family, she said proudly. I started writing during my junior year, just journal entries at first, then short essays about feeling displaced and misunderstood. My English teacher, Mr. Washington, encouraged me to submit to literary magazines. When I won a statewide high school writing contest, the local paper ran a small article about me. I sent the clipping to my parents with a note, thought you might want to see this. They never responded, but Grandma Grace kept every article, every certificate, every small recognition I earned. She created a scrapbook that she showed to anyone who would listen. The mailman, her neighbors, the ladies at her church. My granddaughter Maya, she'd say with fierce pride, going to college on scholarship. And I was, despite everything that had happened, despite starting over at a new school with no support from my parents. I'd managed to earn a partial scholarship to UT Austin. The application essay had been the hardest thing I'd ever written, explaining the gap in my academic record without sounding like I was making excuses or blaming others. I wrote about resilience instead, about learning to start over, about finding strength in unexpected places. I never mentioned Emma by name. The night before I left for college, Grandma Grace gave me a small jade bracelet that had belonged to her mother. For protection, she said, and to remember that you're never really alone. I wore it every day through 4 years at UT, through late-night study sessions and job interviews, and the gradual process of building a life that belonged entirely to me. Every time I caught sight of the green stone on my wrist, I remembered that someone believed in me unconditionally, even when I couldn't believe in myself. College was a fresh start in every sense that mattered. At UT, nobody knew me as the dangerous twin or the girl who'd been kicked out for violence. I was just Maya Chen, journalism major with a part-time job at the campus bookstore and a growing reputation for insightful feature articles in the student newspaper. I lived in the dorms my freshman year, cramming into a cinder block room with a roommate who never asked why I didn't go home for holidays. I spent Thanksgiving volunteering at a local shelter and Christmas working extra shifts at the bookstore. When other students complained about their families, I listened with the fascination of an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. What must it be like, I wondered, to have parents who called just to check in, to have siblings who were genuinely happy about your successes? My journalism professors noticed my tendency to gravitate toward stories about overlooked populations, the underfunded community centers, the aging out foster kids. the family struggling with systems that seem designed to fail them. You have an eye for invisible injuries, Professor Martinez told me after I turned in a piece about student food insecurity. That's a rare gift. During my sophomore year, I started a blog called Hidden Wounds, essays about emotional abuse, family scapegoating, and the long process of healing from childhood trauma. I was careful never to use real names or identifying details, but I wrote honestly about the experience of being erased from your own family narrative. The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in from readers who recognized their own stories and mine. I heard from siblings who'd been pitted against each other, from children who'd been labeled as difficult while their brothers or sisters could do no wrong, from adults still trying to understand why their families had chosen sides against them. "You're not alone," became my standard response to the most heartbreaking messages. Your experience matters. Your truth matters. By my senior year, the blog had thousands of regular readers and had been featured in several online publications about family trauma and mental health. I graduated summa cum laude and immediately landed a job with Austin Monthly magazine, writing features about local personalities and human interest stories. I was building a life, slowly and carefully, like someone learning to walk again after a devastating injury. The call came on a Thursday evening in September, 3 years after graduation. I was in my small apartment near South Lamar, editing an article about local food trucks. When my phone rang, Mrs. Patterson's name appeared on the screen, my old neighbor from the house I'd grown up in. "Maya, honey," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "I thought you should know. Your grandmother's in the hospital." The world tilted sideways. "What happened? Heart attack? She's at Seton, Maine. I I don't think she has very long, sweetheart." I was in my car before Mrs. Patterson finished talking, driving through Austin traffic with tears streaming down my face and my hazard lights flashing. Grandma Grace had been my anchor, my safe harbor, the one person who'd never questioned my worth or demanded that I prove my innocence. When I arrived at the hospital, I was told that only immediate family could visit the ICU. My name wasn't on the approved list. I called my mother's cell phone, then my father's. Both calls went straight to voicemail. I spent 4 hours in that waiting room, watching other families come and go, before a nurse finally approached me with gentle eyes and devastating news. "I'm sorry, honey. She passed about an hour ago, but she left this for you." The nurse handed me an envelope with my name written in Grandma Grace's careful handwriting. Inside was a key and a short note. "Storage Unit 247 on Riverside Drive. Everything you need to know is in the blue box. Be brave, my darling girl. The truth is finally ready to grow." The storage unit was small, barely bigger than a walk-in closet, but it contained treasures I never knew existed. Photo albums full of pictures of me at soccer games, graduation, college events that Grandma had somehow obtained over the years. Newspaper clippings about my achievements, carefully mounted and labeled, letters she'd written but never sent, detailing her pride in the young woman I'd become, Daniel. And in the blue box, the most important discovery of all evidence she'd been quietly collecting for years. There was Emma's old diary from when she was 16, pages and pages of careful planning. "Maya's getting too much attention again." One entry read, "I need to do something bigger this time. If I can make them think she's really dangerous, maybe they'll finally send her away for good." Text message screenshots between Emma and her friend Sarah Williams from high school. "The bruise makeup tutorial you sent me was perfect. No one will ever know it's fake. Maya is so clueless. She actually thinks I hurt myself by accident." But the most damning evidence was a video file on an old digital camera. Emma practicing her victim expressions in the mirror, applying makeup to create fake bruises, rehearsing her tearful explanations. The timestamp showed it was recorded the night before my expulsion. I have to make this look really convincing, she said to her reflection. Maya's been getting too much sympathy lately. Time to remind everyone who the real victim is here. I sat in that storage unit until the sun went down, holding the evidence of my innocence and mourning the grandmother who'd believed in me when no one else would. She'd known the truth all along, but had waited until I was strong enough to handle it. The magazine feature about my work was supposed to be a quiet success, a two-page spread in Austin Monthly about young voices in local media. The journalist interviewed me about my blog, my advocacy for family abuse survivors, and my upcoming book deal with a small but respected publisher. I didn't expect my parents to see it. I certainly didn't expect them to show up at my apartment on a Saturday morning, carrying store-bought coffee cake and manila folders like we were old friends catching up. "We saw your interview," Mom said, pushing past me into my living room without waiting for an invitation. "You look so professional, so successful." Dad clapped me on the shoulder like he'd done it 1,000 times before. "We always knew you'd make something of yourself. All that determination you had as a kid, we knew it would pay off eventually." I stood in my doorway, keys still in my hand from returning from my morning run, trying to process this surreal turn of events. "You want to reconnect. Family should stick together," Dad said, settling onto my couch like he belonged there. "We've been thinking about reaching out for a while, but we wanted to give you space to mature. You know, find yourself." They talked about the weather, about neighbors I barely remembered, about a vacation they'd taken to Colorado as if I'd been part of the planning. Mom complimented my apartment, admired my book collection, asked about my job like a normal mother would. Not once did they mention the years of silence. Not once did they acknowledge why I'd left in the first place. "So," Dad said finally, opening the manila folder, "we didn't just come to congratulate you. We're hoping you might be able to help us out with something." The papers he spread across my coffee table were estimates from contractors, handwritten notes about foundation repairs, and a summary that made my stomach drop. Total estimated cost $28,000. "The house needs some major work," he explained. "Foundation's shifting, plumbing's ancient, roof needs replacing. It's more than we can handle on our fixed income." Mom leaned forward with that smile I remembered from childhood, the one she used when she wanted something. "We figured since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help out a little. It's the least you can do, after everything we've invested in you over the years." "Everything you've invested in me," I repeated slowly. "Your education, all those soccer camps, that laptop for college." She ticked off items on her fingers like she was presenting a bill. "We put a lot into you, Maya. It's time for that investment to pay off." I looked at these people who'd raised me, who'd thrown me away at the first sign of trouble, who now sat in my living room asking for money like the past 7 years had never happened. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. Dad's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me?" "I said I need you to leave, now." "Don't be dramatic," Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar edge. "We're family. Family helps each other." I stood up, walked to my front door, and opened it wide. "Get out." They left, but not before Dad paused in the doorway. "You know, we hoped you'd outgrown this selfishness, but I guess some things never change." After they were gone, I sat in my living room holding the folder of repair estimates and laughing until I cried. Then I opened my laptop and started writing. The blog post was titled, "When Your Abusers Come Back for Money," and I wrote it in one sitting, fueled by 7 years of suppressed anger and grief. I detailed the visit, the casual way they dismissed our history, the entitlement that had brought them to my door with their hands out. But I was careful. I didn't name names or provide specific details that could identify them. I wrote about the pattern, how abusive families often return when their scapegoats become successful, how they rewrite history to position themselves as supportive when they've actually been absent. The post went viral within hours. Comments poured in from readers sharing similar experiences, and several other bloggers shared it with their own commentary. By evening, it had been picked up by larger platforms and was trending on social media. That's when I remembered Grandma Grace's blue box. I'd transferred the evidence to my laptop months earlier, but had avoided looking at it again. Now I sat in my apartment at midnight, reviewing everything she'd preserved. Emma's diary entries, the text messages, the video of her practicing fake injuries. The video was the most damning. Emma's voice was clear as she practiced her victim story. Maya came home angry and started yelling at me. When I tried to calm her down, she just snapped. I've been afraid of her for months, but I didn't want to say anything because she's my sister. She'd rehearsed every word, every gesture, every tear. The performance that had destroyed my life had been carefully planned and executed by someone who understood exactly how to manipulate the adults around us. I uploaded the video to my blog with minimal commentary. Sometimes the truth preserves itself in unexpected ways. This video was recorded by my twin sister the night before I was expelled from high school and disowned by my family for allegedly attacking her. She filmed herself practicing the story that would convince everyone I was dangerous. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed, knowing that by morning, everything would change again. The call came from my cousin Jake at 6 a.m. Jesus, Maya, your phone's been ringing all night. Have you seen what's happening online? I hadn't. I turned off my phone before going to sleep, needing at least a few hours of peace before dealing with whatever consequences would follow. The video had exploded across social media overnight. It had been shared thousands of times, picked up by news outlets, and spawned countless discussion threads about family abuse and false accusations. My inbox was flooded with messages from journalists, family members, strangers, and attorneys offering their services. But the message that mattered most was from Uncle Frank. Family gathering this Sunday at Maria's house. You should come. It's time we all heard the truth. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to let the evidence speak for itself and move on with my life, but I realized I needed to face them, needed to see their reactions with my own eyes after 7 years of silence. The gathering was at my cousin Maria's house, a neutral location where no one could control the narrative or force anyone to leave. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Conversation stopped when I walked in. Some family members nodded at me with what looked like respect. Others avoided eye contact entirely. Emma was there, of course, seated at the kitchen table with Mom flanking her like a bodyguard. She looked older, more brittle somehow, her carefully maintained composure showing cracks around the edges. Uncle Frank had set up a laptop connected to speakers in the living room. When everyone was gathered, he stood up and cleared his throat. "Before we eat," he said, "there's something we need to address, something that's been poisoning this family for too long." He pressed play. Emma's voice filled the room with casual cruelty. Maya came home angry and started yelling at me. When I tried to calm her down, she just snapped. I've been afraid of her for months. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of children playing in another room, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Emma started crying, not the careful, calculated tears I remembered from our childhood, but ugly, desperate sobs. "It was taken out of context," she said through her tears. I was just, I was practicing for drama class. It doesn't mean anything." But even as she spoke, you could see that no one believed her anymore. The evidence was too clear, too specific, too damning. 17 years, Aunt Carmen said quietly. She's been carrying this lie for 17 years. Mom stood up abruptly. This is a private family matter. It doesn't need to be discussed here. Actually, Uncle Frank said, I think it does. Maya was family too, and we failed her. We all failed her. One by one, family members began to speak. Some apologized. Others shared their own doubts about what had really happened. A few admitted they'd always wondered, but had been afraid to say anything. Cousin Jake pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots. There's more, he said quietly. Sarah Williams, you remember Emma's friend from high school? She's been commenting on the video posts. She says she has text messages going back years. Emma told her everything. Through it all, my parents remained mostly silent. Dad stared at his hands while Mom continued trying to shield Emma from the consequences of her own words. I didn't say much during that gathering. I didn't need to. The truth was speaking for itself, and for the first time in my adult life, people were listening. The revelation changed everything and nothing. My blog gained thousands of new subscribers overnight. I received book deal offers from major publishers and speaking invitations from universities and advocacy groups. Several family members reached out with apologies and explanations, trying to rebuild bridges that had been burned years earlier. But Emma fought back, and she was strategic about it. She hired a crisis management firm and claimed the video had been manipulated, taken without consent, and misrepresented. She started her own blog called My Truth, where she positioned herself as the real victim, a woman whose private moments had been illegally recorded and weaponized against her by a vindictive sister. This is what abuse looks like in the digital age, she wrote in her first post. When someone you love becomes obsessed with destroying your reputation, no private moment is safe. Maya has been stalking and harassing me for years, and this video is just the latest escalation. Some people believed her. Not many, but enough to keep the controversy alive. She appeared on a local talk show, tears streaming down her face as she talked about the campaign of harassment I'd supposedly launched against her. She claimed I'd been documenting her private moments for years, waiting for the right time to destroy her life. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even with proof of my innocence, I was still being painted as the problem. My parents supported her narrative publicly while maintaining their silence toward me. Dad gave an interview to a family friend who worked for the Austin American-Statesman, describing me as a troubled child who'd never gotten the help she needed and had now grown into a vindictive adult who couldn't let go of childhood grievances. We tried to get Maya help when she was younger, Mom told a blogger who specialized in family dysfunction stories. But she was always so angry, so resistant to accepting responsibility for her actions. We're heartbroken that it's come to this, but something had shifted in the wider family dynamic and in public perception. Mental health advocates and family trauma specialists began sharing my story as an example of how scapegoating works. Legal experts pointed out that Emma's own video proved premeditation and deliberate deception. Sarah Williams, Emma's former best friend, finally came forward with years of text messages that supported my version of events. I was 17 and scared, she said in a video response. Emma made me promise to back up her stories, and I did because I didn't want to be her next target. I've regretted it every day since. Not everyone was ready to rebuild our relationship, but enough were that I started to feel like I had a family again, just not the one I'd been born into. The most difficult conversation came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Rodriguez, my middle school counselor. She called me one evening, 8 months after the video went public. I owe you an apology. she said without preamble. I was there during those meetings when we discussed your behavioral issues. I had doubts, but I didn't speak up. I should have advocated for you. You couldn't have known, I told her. But I could have asked better questions. I could have looked for other explanations. We're supposed to protect all our students, not just the ones who fit neatly into our expectations. Her words meant more to me than any of the family apologies because she understood something the others didn't. Institutions had failed me too, not just individuals. The legal ramifications were more complex than I'd expected. Several attorneys reached out about potential defamation suits against Emma, but I ultimately decided against pursuing them. I want to move forward, I told my lawyer, not spend years relitigating the past. Instead, I focused on the work that had grown from my pain. Hidden Wounds became a bestseller, leading to speaking engagements across the country and a platform I never imagined I'd have. My second book, Chosen Family, explored how adults can build healthy relationships after surviving family trauma. The success still felt surreal sometimes. I'd appeared on national talk shows, been quoted in major publications, and received thousands of letters from readers who found hope in my story. But the achievement I was most proud of was quieter. I slept well at night. I trusted my instincts. I didn't apologize for taking up space. My relationship with my extended family continued to evolve slowly. Some cousins became close friends. Others maintained polite distance. Uncle Frank and I had coffee every few months, and he'd become something of a father figure, the parent who listened without judgment and offered advice without conditions. My parents and I had exactly 3 conversations in the 2 years following the video's release. The first was when Dad called to tell me Mom had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. I sent flowers to the hospital with a card that said simply, "Wishing you healing." The second was when they wanted to discuss my book before it was published, worried about how they'd be portrayed. I told them they were welcome to read it when everyone else did. The third conversation happened last month. Mom called on a Tuesday evening, her voice smaller than I remembered. "I've been reading your blog," she said. "And your book?" "Okay," I said, not sure where this was going. "I need you to know that I don't think we handled things well. When you were younger." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was acknowledgement. After 25 years, it was something. "Thank you for saying that," I told her. Would you? Would you be open to having dinner sometime? Just the two of us?" I considered it for a long moment. Maybe. But I need you to understand that I'm not the same person who left your house 8 years ago. I won't shrink myself to make others comfortable anymore. "I know," she said quietly. "I'm not the same person either." We haven't had that dinner yet, but the invitation sits between us like a door that's been opened just a crack. I might walk through it someday, or I might not. Either choice is mine to make, and that autonomy feels like its own kind of victory. Emma and I exist in separate worlds now. She moved to Dallas, married a man she met through her crisis management firm, and had 2 children. According to family reports, she's a devoted mother and active in her community. She never responded to my attempts at reconciliation after the book came out, and I've stopped trying. Some relationships can't be repaired, and accepting that has been its own form of healing. I think about her sometimes, though not with anger anymore, but with something closer to sadness. I wonder if she ever feels the weight of what she did, if she lies awake at night remembering the lies that shaped both our lives. I wonder if she's teaching her children to tell the truth, or if the patterns are already repeating. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. I think about the life I'm building, the people who show up for me, the work that gives my pain purpose. My chosen family has grown over the years. There's Jessica, my former roommate, who became the sister I never had. There's Marcus, my editor and closest friend, who challenges me to be a better writer and a more honest person. There's the book club I joined, the writing group that meets monthly, the network of survivors and advocates who understand the particular kind of strength it takes to rebuild yourself from nothing. And there's little Lily, Jessica's 6-year-old daughter, who insists on sharing her half birthday with me every year because birthdays are more fun when there are more people to celebrate. Last year, she made me a card that said, "Happy birthday to my bonus aunt who writes books and tells the truth." I have it framed on my desk, right next to a photo of Grandma Grace and me at my college graduation, the last picture we took together. I hadn't planned to celebrate my 30th birthday. After a lifetime of complicated birthday memories, I preferred to let the day pass quietly. But Jessica had other ideas. "You're having a party," she announced 2 weeks before the date. "A real party, with people who love you and cake that has your name on it." The gathering was small, just 8 close friends at my apartment, but it felt perfect. We ordered too much Thai food, played board games that got increasingly competitive, and told embarrassing stories about our 20s. No drama, no hidden agendas, no careful navigation of family politics. But the moment that broke me, in the best possible way, came when Lily emerged from the kitchen carrying a homemade cake. It was lopsided and covered in rainbow sprinkles, with "Happy Birthday, Maya and Lily" written in purple frosting. "Today's my half birthday," Lily explained seriously. "So we can share Mommy helped with the spelling, but I did all the decorating myself." I stared at that crooked cake with both our names on it and felt something inside my chest crack open. For the first time in my life, my name was on a birthday cake alongside someone who wanted it there, not out of obligation or guilt, but out of pure, uncomplicated love. "That's the most beautiful cake I've ever seen," I told Lily, and I meant it. She beamed at me with frosting already on her fingers from sneaking tastes. "Want to help me blow out the candles? We can make wishes together." We cut the cake together, Lily insisting on giving me the first piece because it's more your birthday than mine. As I took that first bite of slightly too sweet frosting and uneven layers, I realized something profound. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Later, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up the remnants of the party, I found myself thinking about all the birthdays I'd spent alone or forgotten. The cake with only Emma's name, the corner piece of sheet cake, the years of buying myself cupcakes and lighting borrowed matches. None of it had been wasted. All of that pain, all of that loneliness had led me to this moment, surrounded by people who chose to love me, who celebrated my existence without conditions or reservations. I opened my laptop and started writing. Today I turned 30, and for the first time in my life, my name was on a birthday cake alongside someone who put it there out of love, not obligation. Her name is Lily. She's 6 years old, and she taught me something I'd been trying to learn for decades. Family isn't who you're born to, it's who chooses to show up for you. Again and again, especially when it's difficult. I published the post without editing it, then closed my laptop and went to bed, finally understanding what it meant to be enough. Sometimes people ask me if I regret going public with my story, if the cost of speaking my truth was worth it. The question always surprises me because it implies I had a choice in staying silent, but silence was killing me slowly, poisoning every relationship I tried to build, making me doubt my own memories and perceptions. Speaking up didn't fix everything. It couldn't give me back my childhood or erase the years of exile. But it gave me something more valuable, the ability to trust myself. The truth, as Grandma Grace used to say, is like a seed. Sometimes it takes years to grow. Sometimes it requires the right conditions and careful tending to break through the soil, but it always finds a way to flourish if you're brave enough to plant it. I'm not the same girl who stood in that backyard 8 years ago, staring at a cake with someone else's name on it. I'm not waiting for permission to exist anymore, not asking for my name to be included in someone else's story. I became the woman their silence raised me to be, and it turns out she's exactly who I was meant to become. To everyone reading this who's ever been made to doubt their own truth, who's been erased from their family's story, or who's had to rebuild their identity from nothing, your experience matters. Your story matters. You matter. The world needs to hear your truth. And when you're ready to tell it, you'll find that you're stronger than you ever imagined possible. Keep growing, keep blooming, keep becoming exactly who you're meant to be. Shrimad.